Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Russian and the Ukraine crisis. I'm going to be talking about the sanctions. I'm going to be talking about the Russian ruble, how it's plunged today. And I'm going to be talking about how the West is reporting it. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of these Western newspapers or journalists and articles are just exaggerating everything. They're saying everything is doom and gloom for Russia. I don't believe that's the case, and I'll prove it why. So if you carry on listening to the video, you'll see why all of this stuff that's happening is not really going to affect Russia much. It's mainly going to affect the West, and I'll explain why. So without further ado, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. If you want to join my Patreon to support this channel, support the truth, then you're welcome to, or you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. So you can see from these articles, it says Russian ruble plunges nearly 30% against the dollar, and all of these are Bloomberg and US companies, CNBC. These are massive organizations. He says Russian rubles plunged 30%. Russian ruble tumbles 30%. And you even got the Indians here with the Hindustani Times saying Russian ruble drops 30%. We all know how the Indians love a good story. So I decided to check this out by myself. And I went into, basically did a Google search. And you can see from the week's event of how the ruble has been doing over the past week. And you can see since the sanctions took place, the US dollar has become stronger against the ruble. But if you look at the numbers closely, it's just before it went up, it was about 83.5%. You can see from the numbers, 83.54%. And the highest it's reached is 107.04. So if you do a quick calculation with a calculator, you'll realize it's actually 22% or maybe even 21%, because I used 83, not 83.5. So that's probably about 21 to 22%. That is nowhere close to 30%. So can you see all of these articles, the Americans, the Europeans, the Indians, they're all going way ahead of what's actually been printed. They can't even work a calculator very well. You know, it's basically 22%, and 22% is not 30%. So can you see the amount of exaggeration going on? So you see how these Westerners love to exaggerate. Oh yeah, our sanctions are working. Russia is going to be destroyed. The economy is going to be shut down. No, it's not going to be shut down. This is only temporary. This is like the initial shock. Whenever these sanctions are placed against a country, the first few weeks is like that. And it happens to every single country. It's happened to China, it happens to Iran, it's happened to Venezuela. However, the difference between Venezuela, the difference between Iran and all of these countries is Russia is a superpower. And I'll tell you why it's not going to affect Russia. Because, first of all, Russia is a huge exporter of natural gas, oil, raw materials, and those are not being affected by the sanctions. So what do you think Russia's going to do? Because right now, things that the Russians can do, and they've already done actually. So one of the first things, they've increased the interest rate to 20%. So this is to avoid people from taking out the ruble out the banks, because if the ruble is in the banks, it will help the ruble. So it will stop people from taking money out the banks, taking it out the country, for example. Because what they need to have as much ruble in the banks as possible. Other thing they've done is what's similar to what Turkey has done, is asked a lot of businesses to release a lot of foreign reserve funds, and Turkey has done that as well, and Russia's doing the same. And a lot of people don't seem to realize. They say, oh look, they've increased interest rate to 20%. That's a really high amount. But you got to understand, Russia is not a country with very much debt. Russia requires a lot of... look at the world debt clock. USA is at the moment the largest with huge amounts of debt, over 30 trillion, I believe, and it's 98.11% of this GDP. Japan has got the highest amount of debt in the world, 282% almost of its GDP. UK is not far behind. As you can see, UK numbers are not looking very good at all. And if you go down, all the way down, if you keep going down, you'll see Russia. And Russia's only got debt of 17.78% of its GDP, which is not much at all. So, increase the interest rate is not going to affect Russia that much in terms of its businesses. There will be some people affected. I'm not saying won't be affected. There will be some people affected who have got mortgages, for example. They'll have to pay a lot more mortgage rates. But in general, Russia is not a country with huge amounts of debts. And I think they can absorb this hit for 6 months or maybe up to a year. I'm pretty sure they can absorb it. So having the interest rate at 20% is not going to affect Russia as much compared to other countries. If it was a country with a huge amount of debt, then that could have been an issue, like America or UK. Can you imagine if America increases interest rates to 20%? They would immediately go into recession, immediately. Russia is not like that. They are a trade surplus country, which means it exports more than it imports. So it's good in a way that ruble is going down, because its exports, they will make more money via their exports than their imports. So the imports become expensive, but the exports will make a lot more money. And because they are a trade surplus country, by net they will make more money than they will lose money. So this is what Russia's going to do. So they need to protect their ruble. So what Russia will do, I suspect, is they will sell energy, they will sell oil, they will sell gas to India, Europe, whoever wants to buy it, but they will sell it in ruble. They will insist on selling it as ruble. They will say, look, we're not going to sell it as US dollar, we're not going to sell it as euro, we're not going to sell it as rupees or won, we're going to sell it as ruble, because it's really important we trade in ruble for our own economy. And I believe Russia is going to do that. Russia is going to force a lot of countries to trade in ruble. If not, Russia will tell them to screw themselves, because they need to trade in ruble to protect the ruble, and that's the only way they can get away with it. So they will do that. And there's other things as well, which I believe Russia can do, which is not going to affect them as well. They can trade with China more. They can trade with a digital yuan to overcome the SWIFT system. And I believe the digital yuan system is almost ready. I think China has been doing a lot of trial runs over the past few years, and it's going to be ready this year. And China's been preparing for it. Russia's been preparing for it. And I believe they will start trading in digital yuan or even digital ruble as well. And Russia have been preparing for this. Russia has known for years this would happen, so they have prepared for it. They have built many railway lines between China and Russia. And over this year and over next year, you will see trade between Russia and China increase by 100 billion, even 200 billion. And this will accelerate. And all of these tariffs that America has placed on China, things like soybeans and agricultural products, China will stop buying stuff from America and start buying these products from Russia instead. And I believe a lot of Russian farmers have been given the order to give, kind of grow soybeans and provide China with all of its agricultural need, wheat and everything else. And I believe a lot of business is going to go away from America, because America has stupidly put tariffs on all these agricultural goods that China buys. And you can forget about this trade one, phase one deal as well. I mean, that's just out the window. And I think this year China will focus more on Russian trade, and Russia will focus more on the trade with China, and they will try and bring that up. And that will help protect the Russian economy, that will help protect the ruble. And any other country that wants to buy energy from Russia, they will have to trade in ruble, and Russia will insist on that. I don't see any other way, because they need to protect the ruble, they need to protect hyperinflation, and Russia has got advantages in that. It's a huge exporter of energy, and energy prices are through the roof at the moment. So Russia will still make a lot of money from this, even though the sanctions. And I wouldn't worry about Russia anytime soon defaulting or crashing or going into recession. And people that think Russia will crash, they really don't know anything about economics or finance, and I think they're just talking out their arse, to be honest. I have been reading a lot of articles about this and watching a lot of YouTube channels. And one of my favorite channels is Alexander Mercouris, and I agree with everything he's been saying as well, and I believe that sanctioning Russia from the SWIFT is going to be a huge detrimental effect on UK, Europe, as well as America. And I believe that a lot of bankers, people from Wall Street, financiers have been telling the Biden admin not to go ahead with the SWIFT route. Unfortunately, you have all of these Newlands of the world. You have the Biden admin, which is heavily anti-Russian as well as anti-Chinese. They were not having any of it. They were not listening to any of the financial advisors. They said, no, we're going to, sanction Russia with the highest possible sanctions. Doesn't look like they've put any thought into it. They just decided to sanction Russia without realizing what impact it may cause. And one of the impacts it will cause is it will hasten, or it will accelerate all countries to move away from SWIFT, because all of these countries are looking at America, the way it's acting with its sanctions. It's basically used sanctions as a weapon, and every country is looking at this. And China this year, I believe, will have a system ready, which is the digital yuan system, which will go beyond the SWIFT system. Russia will also have a alternative SWIFT system ready as well, and they're going to be trading with each other with it. And a lot of other countries will start jumping in as well, because they do not want to be involved with the SWIFT system, where America can cut you off anytime they want, whenever they feel like it, or whenever you don't listen to them, or whether, if you don't agree with them with anything, they, threaten you with sanctions. So a lot of these countries will move away from American dollar, they will move away from SWIFT, and they will start using this alternative system, which is either the Chinese system or the Russian system, or one that's basically in between, a bit of mix between the Chinese and the Russian. And that will be accelerated. And what the Americans will lose, they will lose sight of money that gets transferred all around, because one of the things that SWIFT does is it gives you a record of all the money that gets transferred around the world, every single transaction, trade. All of that they will lose, because if all of these countries start using this alternative system, America will have no idea, who's trading where. They can't sanction any companies, they can't sanction any countries. They're going to be pretty much blind. And a country's security is very, very important, not just in terms of hot war, but also its economy is also very important. And a lot of countries, up and coming countries, they feel that their economy is very, very important. And the quicker they move away from the US dollar, the quicker they move away from the SWIFT system, the better it is for their economy, the less risk they have in case America decides to put sanctions on any country. And America has been putting sanctions on so many countries around the world. I've lost count of amount of sanctions America's been putting all over the world. Sanctions on China, Russia, South American countries, even countries in Europe as well. I mean, you just don't know what day the Americans will wake up from bed one morning and say, all right, we're going to decide to sanction you. So the quicker all of these countries move away from SWIFT, the better. And I think all of this is a good thing. Russia is taking a big hit, but I think it's going to be good for the world because and China are probably the only countries that can survive sanctions from America. And I think if Russia and China work together and produce an alternative system, I think there's going to be huge amounts of benefits that not only China and Russia will get from, but most of the world will also benefit from this as well. And let's not mess about. Once this Ukraine issue is over, America's going to start messing about with China again. They're going to start interfering with the island of Taiwan. They're going to push for Taiwan to be independent. And they will do that. They will keep doing that. They will keep messing around with the one China policy. And I don't see Taiwan ever reunifying itself, the island reunifying itself with the mainland ever. I think each generation that is born in the island, moves more and more away from the mainland. And I don't see Taiwan and China ever reunifying itself peacefully, and I think it will go along the war route, unfortunately. So my opinion is there will be a war in the Taiwan Strait, and Taiwan will probably want to have independence from China, from the mainland, and that will provoke a war. And China will get a number of sanctions, the same sanctions that the West has put onto Russia, exactly the same one, financial sanctions on China. And as well as that, America will also probably get involved in an attack, in a war with China as well. Because while Ukraine, not many Americans care for, while not many Americans will spill any blood for Ukraine, Taiwan, they might do. So China needs to be very, very careful and only, declare war when China is ready. And when I say China is ready, I mean militarily they must be ready in case Americans step in. And also financially they must be ready as well. So there must be alternative versions to the SWIFT. Their financial systems must be independent from American systems, and Russia is a big test. So Russia, they will see what happens with Russia. They will see how Russia reacts to all of these sanctions. Obviously, China will help, and if this war in Taiwan ever happens, then Russia will help China as well, militarily and economically. So it's important that China and Russia work together on this. And if China helps Russia now, Russia will do exactly the same when China needs Russia's help. And this is a big, big war, West versus East at the moment. And I remember reading an article, and I see why all of this is happening. And it all makes sense. It makes perfect sense. All of this is all about China. Everything, all the sanctions they're putting on Russia is all because of China. It's not because of Russia. It's not because of Ukraine. Basically, the West does not want China and Russia to be superpowers, because together, a strong Russia and a strong China, it doesn't matter how many countries America gets allied with, whether it's all of the Europeans or whether there's a few cronies here and there. No bunch of countries can beat China and Russia together. Russia at its full power, China at its full power, they complement each other, and that is the next superpower, the next world order, and America is very, very scared of that. So they've tried putting China down and it hasn't worked. So their next step is to put Russia down. And the way to put Russia down is to place all of these sanctions against Russia so they don't grow militarily, so they can't be much of a help to China when the time comes, if there's a war in the Taiwanese Strait, for example. So it's all down to all of this, really. And if you think about it, it all makes sense. The big picture is all about China. They don't want a big partner, China partnering with a big partner like Russia. So if they can bring Russia down, if they can cause some sort of maybe a coup in Russia or regime change, because what the Americans are hoping is, the people stand up with all of these sanctions happening and, ruble price, hyperinflation prices going up, and people standing up to Putin, and they want a regime change and stuff. That's what Americans are hoping for, but that's not going to happen. Because if you look at the history of all these sanctions, they've done it to Iran, they've done it to Venezuela, they've done it to Cuba, they've done it to North Korea, and not any of those countries they've managed to get regime change, not one. So all of these sanctions they've been putting all over the world, none of them have worked. None of them have worked. In fact, it has accelerated countries like China, countries like Russia to build an alternative financial system, alternative to SWIFT, because America has been there's been too many American sanctions going around the world, and they've been using it like a weapon, and then they can't be using that as a weapon. It's not a world financial system, it's basically an American financial system, and you either follow American rules or you get sanctioned, basically. So that's the new rules-based order that the Americans want, and China's not part of it, and Russia is not part of it. So all of that makes sense, and you can see, it's not going to work. They can try. I believe by next few weeks you will see the ruble stabilizing. You will start clawing back against the dollar. You will see Russia making a lot of steps to help their ruble. They will do a lot more trade with China, and China is happy to do a lot more trade with Russia. China's not going to be doing much trade with America with all of those tariffs. They rather do these trades with Russia, and that's happening. That's happening over the next year, 2 years. They're going to be doubling their trade, tripling their trade between each other. There's loads of railway links they have between each other, so that's going to increase. Global warming is also going to help Russia as well. A lot of permafrost is going to melt from Siberia, and they will have a lot more agricultural land, which Russia can use to provide goods to China as well. So a lot of good things happening to Russia, and they're welcoming climate change as well. There are 3 gas pipelines going from Russia to China. One's already been built, 2 already on the process of being built. And you can see Russia's providing a lot of gas to China over the next few years. And India will require a lot of gas, and India will require a lot of oil. India is a huge energy importer. It doesn't have oil fields or gas fields like China or Russia or Iran, for example. So for India to survive, India to be a huge industrial nation, it will need a lot of energy, it will need a lot of gas, it will need a lot of oil. And the only country that's cheap enough to provide all of that is Russia. And Russia can provide India with as much gas or oil as it needs. For India to get oil or gas from America, from Australia, it's very expensive. It's almost double the price based on India's location, so they rather get it from Russia, and this is why India has abstained from the UN resolution. The Indians do not want to piss off the Russians, and Indians have made that very clear. And as India grows, and as you will see a lot more industrial output happening in India as well over the next few years. A lot of factories, a lot of people that are going from poverty into middle class. India will require a lot more energy, and over the next few years maybe double, even triple the amount of energy they're using right now, and all of that will be needed from Russia, which means Russia doesn't not really need to provide gas or oil to Europe anymore. They've got two huge markets. They've got China, 1.4 billion people, huge economy, second largest economy in the world, and soon to be the number one economy in the world by 2030. Then you got a rising power with India, 1.4 billion people again, who will need a lot of energy, who will need a lot of oil. And you see these two markets alone, Russia has enough oil and gas to provide for it. So it doesn't need the West, it doesn't need Europe. So if Europe comes knocking on Russia's door saying, okay, we need some gas from you, we need some oil from you, Russia will be like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem, buy it in ruble, because we need you to buy in ruble, otherwise we're not going to sell it to you. And the Europeans are like, oh, damn it, oh, come on, buy in euro. No, sorry, if you don't like it, go somewhere, buy from America for like twice the price. And they're not going to go with it. They're going to buy it from Russia. they're going to have to buy it in ruble. And Russia is not stupid. They've Before they went into Ukraine, they thought about all of this. You know, they haven't gone into it blind. They've been preparing for this since Crimea, and you can see from Crimea days, all of the sanctions that the West has put on Russia has not worked. And Russia knows that one day they would have been out of the SWIFT system, and all of these other sanctions the West has been putting on Russia. Russia knew all of this was coming, so they've been preparing for it for 7-8 years. They've been preparing for it. So I do not think it's going to affect Russia that much. In the short term, there is going to be a judder, there is going to be a shock, but eventually the market will be okay. They will stabilize, and things will go back to normal very, very quickly. If not months, then at least by a year, it will go back very quickly. And when Russian economy goes back to normal very quickly, and they start using this alternative version of SWIFT, you will see American hegemony going down. The dollar as a reserve currency will start to go down, because you got half the world not using the dollar. I'm talking about China, Russia, India, and Middle East and other countries. And America will not have any input on how money is being transferred around the world, because they're not going to be using the SWIFT system. They're not going to be using American dollars. And you will see America going down. Europe will definitely go down because of the high gas prices. They just cannot afford it. So European consumers, or the people that live mainly in UK and other parts of Europe, will have to pay high gas prices, double their bills, triple their bills even. That's going to drive up inflation. That's going to cause riots in the streets, because a lot more people from middle class are going to go into poverty. And it's not going to be looking good for Europe at all. And the most country that's going to be affected is Germany, because Germany has got huge amounts of trade with Russia, and looks like the current government has destroyed all of the good relationship that Russia's been building with Germany over the years. Germany has been quite neutral, but now they've decided to go along the American route. And I believe Scholz is destroying the country, and he's only been in the country in power for a few months, and he's already destroying the German economy. I've seen articles today that a lot of German car manufacturers are not going to be selling to Russia. Russia is a huge market for Germany, and if they cut off Russia, Germany economy will be affected, hugely affected. They're already messing about with China as well. They've not signed the economic deal with China. They've put that on hold. They put the Nord Stream 2 on hold. This will only mean that the European companies will not be able to compete with Russian companies, with Chinese companies, and Chinese companies are just going to get stronger and stronger, and more people will buy from China as opposed to Europe, because the prices are a lot more competitive. German companies won't be able to keep up with China because of the high gas prices, high prices with resources, raw materials coming from Russia or China, high prices for those. European companies will pretty much go bankrupt, and Europe will go into a huge long recession because of this. And then American dollar will go further down. You will see the Western companies, Western way of life is starting to go down, and it's going to accelerate over the next few years, and it's going to accelerate faster with climate change, because it's not like how it was before, where you can have a lot of factories running in your own country. Europeans can't do it anymore, and nor can Americans, because you got to think about the climate change. You got to think about all of the carbon footprint that all of these companies are doing. They'd rather let China do that. They rather blame China for the carbon footprint. They rather blame China for climate change, and they do that because they export all of their pollution to China, because they let China produce all of their goods and they just import it from China. And they can't do it in their own countries because of the carbon footprint, plus the high wages. You got the high rent costs, you got the high gas prices, And if you're a company and you want to start up in Europe, you're not going to make much returns. Compare yourself with a similar company from China who can make 10 times as many goods with better quality, a faster turnaround. You just can't compete with that. So anyway, I'm going to end it now. But before I do, I'm just going to go through a few more articles and let's have a quick laugh, shall we? Ukrainians prepare to go home to fight. So this is the British Ukrainian army who's going to Ukraine to fight. Apparently, they've been given the go-ahead by the British. They're getting a lot of heroes welcome. So this is the army which will turn the tide, and they will beat Russia, and Russia will go home crying, thanks to 7 super soldiers. They think they are the Ukrainian Avengers, but let's see how many body bags they come back with. So EU freezes assets of Russia's leading oligarchs and allies of Putin. So EU freezes a lot of these Russian oligarchs, and the only people that's going to be affected are the Russians who have actually moved abroad. So a lot of Russians in UK, a lot of Russians all around Europe who've actually, taken a lot of money out of Russia, and they have invested in Europe. They have invested in properties and businesses. Like you got Roman Abramovich, who's bought a Chelsea football club. So he's doing it all with Russian money. So he's taking it out of Russia, and they're putting it into Europe. And if their assets are frozen, if Europeans decide to freeze all of their assets, well, they deserve it. Because, if you think you can steal money from Russia, go to Europe and live a good life, this is what happens to you. This is what you deserve. And I think what these guys need to do is go back to Russia, take their money out of Europe, take the money out of properties, other investments, businesses, go back to Russia, and use that money in Russia and build infrastructure and help the Russian people. That's what they need to do, not run away in Europe and try and live a good life. So if these guys, lose their wealth, their assets get frozen in Europe, I'm all up for that. I agree with that. FIFA to suspend Russia from all international football. So you can see all of these companies who are mixing politics with sports. This is coming from the West. Is very, very feeble, if you ask me. It's very, very, very low, a low punch below the belt. And they've done it to China. Now they're doing it to Russia. I think sports and politics should stay separate, but these guys are still mixing it. Shell follows BP out of Russia as UK oil companies abandon Putin. So let me tell you something. Do you really think Shell and BP leaving Russia is really going to affect Gazprom, really going to affect Russia? Russia has got huge amounts of oil, it's got huge amounts of natural gas, and only Russia will benefit from this. These guys pulling themselves out, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. And these are UK-based oil companies, so where else are they going to get oil from if they're not going to get it from Russia? China's not going to give it to them. Middle East is not going to give it to them. So they're pretty much, they don't have much oil around UK. I think there was oil field around Scotland, but there really isn't much oil left around UK. They're pretty much searching for peanuts at the moment. They do have investments in other places around the world, but it's not much. These companies are just going to lose out in the long term. So if they want to do that, let them, I'd say. Russia blames UK for nuclear defense decision and shuts airspace to 36 nations. So this is basically in regards to EU banning a lot of Russian flights. So Russia has banned a lot of EU flights, banned a lot of UK flights, and the airline industry is really being hammered at the moment because you got the coronavirus where a lot of planes were grounded, a lot of people didn't travel. So a lot of airline industries were really struggling over the past couple of years. So now things are starting to go back to normal. Now they have to pay for more fuel because they have to fly around Russia. They're gonna have to fly more. They're gonna have to stop more in other airports, so they're gonna have to pay more charges. And this is not looking good for airline companies around EU, especially in the UK, because there's a lot of flights that go past Russia. So if you want to go maybe to Asia, if you want to go to India, for example, if you want to go to China, if you want to go to Japan, Korea, you want to go to Philippines or Thailand, there's a lot of flights that go through Russian airspace. So if these airlines are not going to be allowed to go through Russian airspace, they're going to have to go through other airspaces, and that's just going to add about 4 or 5 hours to their time, which means more petrol. And some of these planes can't even go that long distance, so they're going to have to stop over maybe in other countries, and they're going to have to pay a charge to those countries, and these flights are going to be much longer as well. So they're just shooting themselves in the foot. Russia doubles interest rate after ruble slumps. I've already gone over that. And Meerkat Ads pulled over Ukraine war sensitivities. So in UK, especially in Britain, there are all of these Meerkat ads on television, and these are Russian-speaking Meerkat ads. They've got a Russian accent, and they've all been pulled from the television because of the anti-Russian sentiment. And I think it's really childish, if you ask me. And a lot of these politicians are very childish when they go to these kind of lengths. This is really stupid. It's almost like as bad as Americans renaming French fries to freedom fries because France wouldn't support them in the Iraq war. I don't know if any of you remember that. That's as stupid as that. So Britain is starting to do this. Europeans are also doing it as well. It's really childish. Really childish. Volkswagen suspends delivery to cars to Russian dealerships amid worsening supply chain crisis. So Volkswagen is obviously a German brand, suspends delivery of cars to Russian dealerships, and you can see a lot more car dealerships which have business with Russia start aborting their business with Russia, or there could be issues with that. Russia's not going to care. They will buy cars from China. There's a huge revolution of electric cars. Russia will help support that. Russia can focus on electric cars. They can focus on the infrastructure for electric cars, charging points and things like that. And they can buy cars from China. I think Russia should say, screw you to Europe. We don't need your cars anymore. Screw you to America. We don't need your cars anymore. And affect all of these businesses and their profits. And I think Russia and China should help each other. Russia should buy Chinese cars and vice versa. And I've already gone over that. So that's all for today, guys. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for listening.